Good afternoon. Good to see all
Yep.
of you. We have a few people that are still joining. Ricardo, how are you today?
I am well. How are you, Kimberly?
Fine, thank you. For people joining, Ricardo is our lead for the SOC 2 practice here at ControlCase. He's actually doing an on-site SOC 2 audit, but I didn't want him to miss this in case I told you the wrong thing. So, Ricardo, thank you for hopping into your car and agreeing to just talk to us today.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. My pleasure.
Okay. So for housekeeping, my name is Kimberly Simon. I manage our strategic partnerships here at ControlCase. So everything to do with our reseller partners, our MSPs, MSSPs, kind of goes through me and my team. And then Ricardo heads the SOC practice. We're so excited to speak to you today. We're talking about SOC 2 for MSPs and their clients. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. This is probably going to run about 30 minutes. We want to keep these short. As we go, please add any questions that you have into the questions window. We want to answer all your questions. My email address is ksimon@controlcase.com. Ricardo's rpado@controlcase.com. So if the question comes to you after, you can always email us. We want to make sure that you have all the information that you need. We will be sending out a recording of this. So with the time that we have, Ricardo, I'm going to hand over to you. Start with maybe an introduction on what is SOC 2, what's involved in a SOC 2 assessment, and then we can be looking at the questions that everybody else is coming up with. So over to you.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what SOC 2 is. And with that, I want to start off by saying ControlCase started.
Sorry, Ricardo. We can't see your screen.
Can you see it now, Kimberly?
Yes, you got it. Yes,
Perfect.
You can see. Sorry about that, everybody. Yeah.
No, thank you. Yep. So let's talk a little bit about SOC compliance. And to begin with, let's start with a major item, which is SOC is not a certification; it is an attestation. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But let's go into kind of our agenda. What is SOC? What is SOC certification? What is a SOC report, and what does it look like? Why do managed service providers comply with SOC 2? And then lastly, kind of what MSPs can do to prepare for SOC 2s. So what is SOC 2 compliance? SOC 2 compliance talks about the non-financial reporting of internal controls. Really what it's trying to do is make sure that the controls that have to do with selected criteria address to your clients, to internal stakeholders, etc., how the system is running, how your organization is running from an organizational aspect into a cybersecurity aspect. It's making sure that the data you're housing within your system is maintaining privacy and integrity. All right, so who does SOC 2 attestations apply to? Really, any organization can take on a SOC 2. It is really to address and to be able to demonstrate to your clients that you're doing your due diligence at all times and doing so efficiently, effectively over a period of time. So cloud organizations, SaaS organizations are some of just the few organizations that benefit from SOC. So we're going to talk real quick about the 5 trust service criteria. Again, there's 5 criteria: security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, privacy. And we'll talk very quickly about each one. I'll leave the slides on the screen for just a second so that everybody can kind of see and take the information at your pleasure once you receive the slides. That will be a presentation here at the end. So how to choose your trust service criteria. Security is a must. Can't do a SOC 2 without security. From there, you're talking about availability, making sure the availability of the system, SLAs to your clients, are maintained and held up. Confidentiality of the data, meaning that the data you collect from organizations in bulk is kept confidential. Processing integrity, ensuring that when your repetitive process needs to be addressed, you can demonstrate that you're doing the process time and time again in a method that maintains accuracy, completeness, and integrity of that data. And then lastly, privacy, which has to do with personal information, private information, think health records, think information on yourself that you don't want anybody to know. Okay. So let's talk very quickly again, security. It's required with every SOC engagement, also known as the common criteria. What we do to evaluate trust service criteria, we evaluate things such as penetration testing, vulnerability assessment, making sure you have firewalls, making sure you have access controls, policies in place such as computer usage policies, and the like are what are or how security is addressed. Availability addresses the uptime of the system, and it's really making sure that the system is available to your consumers, to your clients at any given time. All right. Things that we look at are things such as performance and incident monitoring response, disaster recovery, redundancy, replication. Confidentiality then addresses maintaining your data protected and secure. It ensures that data, while it's in movement, while it's in storage, has a high level of encryption. So what do we do to evaluate confidentiality? We're looking at things such as digital access controls, network and application firewalls, to name a few. Processing integrity. Again, making sure that those processes that you're doing a repetitive process can ensure the accuracy, completeness of that data over a period of time again. And so what do we do to evaluate it? Things such as QA, quality assurance, process monitoring, ensuring that the data is not lost throughout the process. And then privacy. So what are we doing to address privacy? We're looking at making sure that the data, such as PII, social security numbers, information such as contact information, address, emails, when it's in bulk, can be costly. It can be an issue from your clients, from your individual users, right? So what do we do to protect or to evaluate privacy that it's being upkept? Notice and communication of objectives, choice and consent forms, what the collection of data is going to look like, what that quality of data is going to look like. So again, now that we know kind of the trust service criteria, what does the SOC 2 look at when we look at a report and we address the common criteria? So we're looking at 9 individual subcategories. We're looking at things such as control environment, risk assessment, monitoring of controls, risk mitigation, system operations. All these things really give your clients and the readers or consumers of this report a high level, but at the same time focused information as to how your system is looking, how you're doing your process, how you're keeping your controls active. Okay, what is SOC 2 certification? Let's start there because this is a big one, right? SOC 2 is not a certification. SOC 2 is an attestation. It is a report that attests the trustworthiness of services. It is signed by a CPA, and the reason that it's signed by a CPA is it's using the accounting methodology as established by the AICPA, which has the background of the COSO framework to be able to support the evaluation of these controls. Okay. So what kind of SOC 2 reports are there? There's really 2 types of SOC reports, or SOC 2 reports. There's a type 1 and a type 2 report. Let's go over a little bit of the difference in the 2. So the type 1 report is looking at addressing, do you have controls in place or not? And to be able to do that, it is done as a point-in-time evaluation. Um, when you look at the SOC 2 Type 2, there things change just a tiny bit. What it's looking at is not just evaluating the controls being there, it's also evaluating the effectiveness of the controls. Meaning, over a period of time, usually 6 months or a year or so, how those controls function, right? Did they do what they were supposed to? Did they do it systematically? If we look at month 1 versus month 3 or month 7, did it do the same thing? Did it accomplish the goals, right? And so to be able to do that, we look at the organization when we're doing a SOC 2 audit. We look at it in retrospect, right? So we're doing an audit of what happened the last 6 months, what happened the last 12 months. Okay. So why do managed service providers comply with SOC 2? There's many reasons for it, but one of the biggest concerns for businesses out there when it comes to MSP is security, right? The potential for data breaches and leaks. So to do that, a SOC 2 evaluation expects that you would have a lower risk overall because you're maintaining a continuous process of internal audit, of risk evaluation, of monitoring of controls, right? While you're doing that, you're also increasing your cybersecurity maturity. Then also, SOC 2 can help MSPs attract more clients. Once they see that you have a SOC 2 attestation under your belt, they're more open to work with you, right? To let you into their systems, to have access to their data. So it's a win-win. So how do managed service providers prepare for their first SOC 2 audit? One of the things I always say is MSPs know what they know and are good at it, but they may not know what they don't know. And so because of that, and because SOC 2 can help MSPs attract clients, one of the first things we do is evaluate the environment using a gap assessment. Sorry. The evaluation of a gap assessment then allows you to really kind of get into what you do know, but then you also get to know what you don't know, right? What are you missing? What do you need to do to prepare for the actual SOC 2 audit? And that kind of finalizes my slide. So, Kimberly, I think that's kind of in a nutshell what what MSPs can do, how they can go about getting this done. And so I kind of open it to you.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. We appreciate that. So I can see that people are adding questions. Please feel free to continue to add your questions in the questions window, and we'll address them. We still have a little bit of time here. So yeah, we certainly have a few minutes to go through a few of those. So first question, what are some of the biggest challenges that you're seeing with MSPs achieving their own SOC 2 Type 2?
So one of the biggest challenges that I've seen, again, is the point of understanding what you know, but bigger than that, knowing or learning what you don't know. So many times we go into work with an MSP, we find that there's open areas that really could use some implementation, some remediation, things such as internal audit. And we kind of expect that, right? We kind of know that MSPs many times have a smaller footprint, not a lot of resources. So it helps to be able to understand what you need to focus on, right? What those resources that are kind of sparse already, what do they need to work on?
Thank you. Great question here. What are some of the timelines that people can expect for SOC 2 Type 1 and SOC 2 Type 2?
Sure. So that's a great question, and that's a kind of a loaded question. We get that asked all the time. The reason it's kind of loaded is because timeliness is not a big difference between a Type 1 and a Type 2. Many times it's expected to, but it's really, it's a little bit more time-consuming, a little more effort on our end with the evaluation of the controls, right? How do we evaluate it? The intent of how we're evaluating. But the timeliness is kind of the same. So what does it take for us normally? right? On average, it takes us about 4.5 months to do an end-to-end audit. That consists of about 3 months upfront to do evidence collection, right? Evidence gathering from the MSP side. During that same time, us reviewing the evidence to make sure it addresses the criteria that we're trying to evaluate and address. During that same time, we're working on weekly sessions where we can hash things out together. And then from there, it's more on the reporting side. So it's more taking us time to write and evaluate that report.
Great. So just to add to that, it depends on a few things, because also, like with any audit, if you guys don't provide evidence, then we have nothing to review, right? So you have a little bit of a, yeah, so as MSPs, you have a little bit of power on that. As our customers, you have a little bit of power on that. If you don't provide information, you don't join calls with your assessors. We have the concept of regular calls with your assessors here at ControlCase. So if you're not attending those sessions and if you're not providing the evidence that we need to review, you'll find that this process will take you a lot longer. It's a lot of work. Okay. So it's not like I always find that people think getting the budget approved is that's it. You're buying an audit. No, that's where the work begins. So
that's right.
So there's always that. Another question that we have here is, does ControlCase do SOC 2 gap assessment?
So we definitely do gap assessment. And in fact, that's probably the number one thing that I recommend, especially when it's your first time, right? We've seen organizations that have done SOC 2s in the past with other audit firms, and we have found that they benefit from a gap assessment as well, right? But especially if you're going for a first-time audit, I think it's really crucial. It's really crucial to understand where you're getting into, and again, really knowing where to focus your efforts after that to get ready for that audit.
Yeah, and then do you help with also remediating those gaps?
That is a great question. And there's a very clear-cut answer, right? Because the AICPA guidelines actually say you're not allowed to do, judge and jury. We're not allowed to audit our own work, right? So we can't help remediate. Can't help implement. But what we can do is let you know where you stand, and we can give you a generalized direction on what it needs to get to being in a compliant state, or at least meeting the generalized intent of the criteria.
Great, thank you. And I want to add to that for our MSP partners that this is actually a good point that makes us a great partner for you. So ControlCase ends up becoming your we end up actually being your partner. So the idea is, because we cannot audit our own work, if you have a customer that needs SOC 2, we are the auditor on record. Any gaps that we find, they work with you to actually, they work with you to close those gaps. So once we start a SOC 2 engagement, if you've been trying to get your customer to sign up for MFA, for firewalls, for penetration testing, for security awareness, incident response, all of those things that you've been trying to get your customer to care about, just by them signing up to be SOC 2 compliant, they now come into play. And now they're hearing it from a third party that's saying, hey, you need to work with your MSP and get these things implemented as soon as possible because you have risk here. So that's how that works for our MSP partners. We actually end up really partnering very well in us being the auditor on record and then helping close those gaps. I have one more question. If you guys still want to put in questions, please go right ahead. But question is, if an MSP is small and they don't have a lot of resources, can they still do a SOC 2 audit and pass it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the key thing to address here is communication. And that's something that we kind of pride ourselves on at ControlCase, especially. In other organizations that I've worked on, right? Communication is what digs holes instead of covers them up, right? So if from the beginning we say, we're told by the MSP, look, we're limited resources, that this is what we can focus on. We can kind of build a plan that works for the organization. We can build a plan that really kind of sets the expectations, how to move forward and come out of it successfully.
Okay. I don't see any other questions. I'm going to give it like 30 seconds, and then we can close a little bit 5 minutes early. So if you have any questions, please feel free to add those there. But you know, SOC 2 is a great framework. We partner with MSPs for them to achieve their own SOC 2, and then we work with them for their customers' SOC 2 requirements. We have special pricing for our MSP partners, both for their audits and the audits of their customers, of course. We understand how MSPs work, and we're committed to helping our MSPs accelerate their revenue by adding cybersecurity compliance audits to their stack. So please get in touch with me if you'd like a demo of how we can do that and how we can partner with you. But we appreciate your time this afternoon. Ricardo, thank you for joining.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me, Kimberly.
No worries. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye now.